Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through the noise, dissecting the big stories to really uncover what's behind the headlines for you.
Exactly, giving you the context you need.
And today, we're diving into something pretty fascinating. An event that was somehow, like, incredibly public, but also intensely secret at the same time.
Yeah, we're talking about Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez's recent three-day wedding event in Venice.
A real extravaganza.
Absolutely. It was this mix of, well, unbelievable wealth, really careful privacy, and maybe surprisingly, some real challenges along the way.
So our mission today really is to pull back that curtain. We've looked at all the detailed reports to find the most interesting bits, the controversies, everything, so you can quickly grasp the whole story.
Get the full picture behind the hype.
Okay, so let's unpack it. We've gone through a ton of reports. Let's start with the setting. Venice. Why Venice?
Well, obviously, it's beautiful, romantic, all of that. But the reports make it clear there was a very practical side to it.
Right. They chose that specific island, San Giorgio Maggiore, which is, pretty secluded.
Exactly. It's in the San Marco district, known for those amazing Renaissance basilicas. But the key thing, the reports stress: privacy, security, inaccessibility.
Because there were protests happening in Venice.
Yeah, ongoing protests. There were even apparently threats of blocking the canals. So the report suggests they actually had to change some venue plans last minute because of it.
Wow. So a private island gave them that control, that isolation they needed.
Precisely. You couldn't guarantee that elsewhere in the city.
And then the guest list. I mean, talk about star power.
Oh, yeah. Around 200 celebrity guests, roughly. All arriving by water taxi, which must have been quite a sight.
We saw pictures of, like, the Kardashian-Jenners, Bill Gates, Carly Kloss, Oprah.
Usher, Orlando Bloom, Tom Brady, the Kushners, Sydney Sweeney. Leo DiCaprio was apparently seen on Thursday, too.
But here's what really jumped out at me from the reports once they were inside. It seems like there was a total social media blackout.
That's right. And it's really telling, isn't it, for an event this big with all those public arrivals,
Yeah.
to then have this clampdown on social media. It shows a massive effort to control the narrative.
So their story, like the Vogue photos, would be the main story.
Exactly. Not, random blurry shots from guests. It's a fascinating power play in today's world, trying to create curated privacy.
Okay, and another crucial detail that kept coming up in the reports, the Friday ceremony. It wasn't actually legally binding in Venice.
No. Apparently, the city never got an official request from them, so any rings exchanged were probably symbolic.
Which is interesting, given the scale of the whole thing. What's your take on that?
Well, it makes you wonder, when or where the actual legal bit happen or will happen. But then think about Lauren Sanchez immediately changing her Instagram handle right after those Vogue pictures came out to @LaurenSanchezBezos.
Right, that was fast.
Super fast. And that's not just a minor detail. It's a very public statement, a deliberate move to say, okay, this is official now, at least in the public eye. Even if the Venetian ceremony was symbolic, it's all about perception.
So the main event was Friday. But how did this whole three-day thing even start? The kickoff was unexpected.
Yeah, you might not guess this one. It reportedly started with a foam party.
A foam party.
Seriously.
On their huge, $500 million super yacht near an island in Croatia, actually. Yenije.
Wow.
And it happened to be Sanchez's son, Evan's 19th birthday, too.
Okay, that definitely sets a different tone than you'd expect for a formal wedding weekend.
Totally. There were paparazzi photos, of them in swimwear, covered in foam. One report even joked about the risk of conjunctivitis.
Ha.
Right. It adds this sort of human, maybe slightly chaotic touch to what was otherwise super planned. And before that even, Sanchez had her bachelorette party in Paris.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing something about that. Kim Kardashian was there.
Kim K, Katy Perry, Eva Longoria. So yeah, the lead-up events were already making headlines. Sounds like fun. But back in Venice, there was this undercurrent, right? The protests we mentioned.
Definitely. It wasn't just background noise. These were significant protests happening right around the wedding. Greenpeace, for example, reportedly hung a huge banner in St. Mark's Square.
What did it say?
Something like, if you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax. Pretty direct. Yeah, very direct. And this really taps into that whole bigger conversation, doesn't it? About extreme wealth, tourism impact, what happens to historic cities.
Right.
Extinction Rebellion apparently protested too in Piazza San Marco, and local activists were rallying against what they saw as a, quote, takeover of the city.
And the reports mentioned threats of blocking canals and even uncanny Bezos mannequins.
Yeah, which, like we said, apparently forced those last-minute venue changes, so it really underlines why they might have wanted that super secure private island location.
It does put it in perspective.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just protests causing drama. Nature had its own plans.
Oh, right. The thunderstorm.
Yeah, during the welcome party on Thursday night at the Madonna dell'Orto cloisters, reports described a freak thunderstorm. Heavy rain, lightning.
Apparently, it soaked a lot of the guests, and they had to end the party early.
Just goes to show, even with all that money, you can't control the weather.
No. It's a good reminder, actually. Even with the best planning, some things are just out of your hands. Adds a bit of unexpected drama to the whole story. A contrast to the perfection they were aiming for, probably.
Okay, let's talk fashion. Because every detail was getting attention, but the wardrobe, especially Lauren Sanchez's, that was a whole narrative itself.
Absolutely. Her main wedding gown, the Dolce & Gabbana one, that was apparently a year and a half in the making.
Wow.
Reports described it as high-necked lace corseted with 180 silk chiffon-covered buttons all down the front. Really intricate.
And the big reveal was through Vogue, like a digital cover.
Yep. Which, again, tells you how curated this whole thing was. They controlled that first image.
And she had other outfits too, right?
Oh, yeah. Reports detailed 2 more changes just that night. A sweetheart neck dress for the dinner, which was apparently a nod to the old movie Gilda.
Okay.
And then this Oscar de la Renta cocktail dress covered in, get this, 175,000 crystals.
Wow.
And even before the ceremony, her arrival outfit was noted. A white Dior skirt suit, very 60s, scarf tied like Audrey Hepburn, Jimmy Choo's, an Hermes bag. The whole wardrobe was clearly thought out, themed.
And the guests, they must have upped their game too.
Oh, absolutely. The reports were full of designer names: Vintage Cavalli, Dolce & Gabbana, Oscar de la Renta, Versace.
Have specific looks that stood out in the reports?
Well, they mentioned Kylie Jenner in a powder blue corset gown, Kim Kardashian in the sleek, like, dark toffee dress. She also wore an archival Versace snake print earlier. Oprah was apparently in a draped pink mermaid gown.
Sounds like a high fashion event.
Definitely. And more than just expensive clothes, reports mentioned this trend of Dolce Vita vintage cosplay.
What does that mean?
Like, guests were channeling old Italian movie stars, Sophia Loren, Monica Vitti, through their vintage fashion choices. It wasn't just a party, it was like a living fashion history moment, an immersive theme.
A visual feast, as you said, and the soundtrack. Did reports mention music?
They did. Apparently, Matteo Bocelli, Andrea Bocelli's son, performed.
What did he sing?
Can't Help Falling in Love, the Elvis classic. Very fitting, very romantic. Adds to that whole vibe of curated elegance.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, some of the other details that came out in the reports. The invitation, for instance. It had an unusual request.
Yes. Please, no gifts.
Right. Instead, they said donations would be made for the guests to causes related to Venice, like Venice International University and lagoon restoration.
It's an interesting move, isn't it? How people with that level of wealth handle traditions like gifts. It's philanthropic, redirects the focus.
Yeah. But even the invitation design got attention online, apparently.
It did. It had these sort of doodle-like drawings, butterflies, stars, the Rialto Bridge, and people were speculating if it was like AI generated or maybe even bought in bulk from Amazon.
Seriously, Amazon.
Well, that was the speculation. It just shows how every single detail gets scrutinized when you're talking about figures like Bezos. Everything is up for interpretation.
True. And there were goodie bags, naturally.
Of course. Reports mentioned treats from a famous old Venetian bakery, Rosa Salva, and colorful glassware from a Murano glass specialist called Laguna B.
Nice. A little piece of Venice to take home.
A very luxurious piece, I imagine. And while all this was going on, some guests were doing other things, too. Bill Gates was apparently spotted visiting the Gallery dell'Accademia.
Oh, the art museum?
Yeah, with a friend, saw Titian's Pieta. So, even amidst all the parties, some cultural appreciation was happening. A nod to Venice's heritage.
And how did it all wrap up? The 3 days.
Well, the day after the main event, Bezos and Sanchez Bezos were seen at Harry's Bar, the famous restaurant.
Classic Venice spot.
And the final closing party, reports say, was held at the Arsenal, Venice's old medieval shipyard.
Which is now like a cultural center, right? Hosts the Biennale.
Exactly. So kind of a fitting end location, blending that historic grandeur with modern cultural significance. Much like the whole event, really.
So if we just kind of zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
This whole thing was this really complex mix, wasn't it? Glamour, intense privacy, but also these real-world issues, the protests.
Absolutely. It really felt like a snapshot of so many current tensions and trends.
Highlighting that intersection of, extreme wealth, celebrity obsession, philanthropy, public pushback.
Yeah, all wrapped up in one very lavish, very talked about weekend. It almost holds up a mirror to where we are right now, culturally.
Hmm. So maybe the final thought for you listening. What does an event like this, with all its luxury, its specific charity choices, and the very direct protests it faced, what does it really tell us about how extreme wealth, fame, and I guess societal values are interacting and maybe changing in our world today?
Definitely something to mull over long after the headlines fade.